Hello, Noel T. Manning II here, and welcome to the Art of Public Speaking. Really glad today to be joined by someone whose voice carries real influence. Omar Porter, your influence goes across athletics, ministry, the arts, and community leadership. Whether you're on the field, on stage, or out in the community, you really have found this way to connect with people through your authenticity, through your purpose, and through your heart. Also, a Gardner Webb alum, got to make sure we share that
Yeah.
as well. And love for you today to be able to talk about where that voice came from, how you use it to lead and encourage others, and also what it means to communicate, whether that's through courage, through clarity, or impact. Just really excited to have you join our students today as we talk about some of your insights and maybe some of the stories behind what you do every single day. Omar, welcome, buddy.
Thank you, man. Glad to have you. I'm honored to be here. I always say, man, you were one of the first people I ever seen locally on TV. And I remember just being a young guy and then seeing you in public. It's like, man, that's Noel T. Manning, man. He's a star, I'll never forget that, seeing that on the local news and stuff, man. So I'm honored to be on here.
Well, I truly appreciate it, buddy. And it's been wonderful to watch your journey as well throughout the years. And I'm just proud of you, but more than that, proud to call you a friend.
Yes, sir.
And a colleague, and I'm glad that we've had a chance to work together on occasion
Yes,
as
sir.
well. Well, Omar, let's go back. Talk about where the power of voice comes from. And voice we've talked about in class can be your written voice, it can be your speaking voice, it can be the way you engage with others. I'd love for you to talk about maybe where that came from. Who were some of those mentors that maybe influenced you along the way?
I mean, well, the thing is, I think even when somebody asked me the question about, having a voice, I never really knew I had one. I just live life and try to do things a certain way, and I guess people just happen to listen. But of course, my grandfather is like one of my biggest influence. I was raised by my grandparents, and so my grandfather definitely was one of my biggest influences on just kind of teaching me certain things. He was a Navy guy, raised by his grandparents, so he did things in a stern, military way at times. But then just him and a lot of my other family members, aunts, uncles, just even cousins that I looked up to, and I watched them do a lot of things in different ways. And so watching them, I was a person that watched people around me, how they moved and how they did everything. And I think I just kind of took from different people, from the community, from my family, and even the sports world or whatever it may be, teachers, the whole nine.
Yeah, I think that's where influences come from, is we find those that we're drawn to, that we're connected to. And I think we can also learn from those that we don't want to be like as well.
That's right. That's right.
I think every encounter we're able to engage, we can take lessons from that. And you've been able to take your voice and your leadership, as I mentioned earlier, through ministry, arts, athletics, community leadership as well. How do you shift the way that you engage with those different populations when you're sharing messages? How do you feel like you shift? What does that look like for you?
One thing for me, I'm always gonna be me. Yeah, that's one thing I feel like, you know, so when I was in high school, like just growing up in church, I did stuff in church, but then I was an athlete in high school, but I also was in theater, so I've always kind of been just with different pockets of people all the time. And I've never changed. I just kind of just been who I was in those areas. But also you do have to pay attention to the audience that you're around, and kind of like just kind of tailor make that, whatever the message is, to that audience. And I feel like because I've always been around so many people and I'm a people person, like I've always felt like I could connect to different types of people, even though the message may be the same, but you could tailor it, to different people and change it and shift it in those pockets.
Well, let's talk. You mentioned theater, and I think that's just a great thing that you still found a way to connect to, is that acting. Talk about the power of theater and what you learned from that, and how maybe that's allowed you to transition those lessons throughout all the different avenues.
So with having a background in theater, and then so with theater, I learned being on the stage, you can't mess up. Like, when you're on the stage projecting in front of people, like you have to project to the people that's in the audience. But then once I started doing TV film, you have to make it smaller. It can't be as big. I was on the set of one commercial that I was doing, and it was a theater guy on a set of a commercial for the first time, and he was just so loud and so broad, and they had to tell him like, "Hey, calm it down," and that's a lesson that I never forgot. To where I learned the difference in, hey, this is theater, this is TV film. You can't. It's not the same. You're still doing your acting, but the projection that you're doing when people are in front of you is totally different when you have this when you're doing TV film, and even when learning your lines. When you're on stage in a play, you better know all those lines. But when I start doing TV film, it's like, wait a minute, I can pause, they're gonna stop, and I can look back at my lines and look back up and do it. So when it comes to speaking, I apply both of those. When I'm speaking, and even if I'm in an audience of people, I can project loud, but then I can kind of watch their faces and see on certain points I know to bring it back down, if that makes sense. So that background has definitely helped me both from having theater and being on TV film. Both of those have helped me with speaking because I can kind of watch the crowd and know when to project and when not to.
Absolutely. Audience awareness. That's a big thing. You touched on that. And previously you had also talked about, I guess those things go hand in hand when you're aware of who it is you're speaking to and what that audience is, that can determine how you engage, not just what you say, but how you say it. I too came from a theater background, Omar, and I remember when I first started working with Headline News, and you'd mentioned seeing me on there doing the movie reviews. I remember Greg Tillman, who gave me
Yeah.
that chance. He gave me that opportunity, and I'm forever grateful for him because so many things have happened because he saw potential in me. But I remember the first time he put me on camera, I was coming from that theater background, and so I was trying to articulate every single word,
Yeah.
and I was doing it in a way that if I was on stage, here's how I would say it.
Hmm.
And he said, "No, no, no, no. You're talking to me.
Right.
You're talking to me. I am literally across the table from you. How would you say this in that way?" And that helped me so much
Hmm.
because I was so used to doing it and making sure when I spoke that the people in the back of the auditorium
Right.
would be able to hear me, and they would, and so I would, my language was not natural,
Hmm.
but it was natural for that environment, and
Right.
so that's when you transition to that. But I'll never forget when he told me, he said, "No, you're just talking to me. We're at a table, we're
Hmm.
having lunch together, and if you want to talk to me about this movie, how would you talk to me about this movie?" And
Yeah.
that whole shift, it was a perspective thing for me, and that made
Yeah.
such a difference.
Yeah.
And so you talk a little bit more about film and how you utilize that language. Do you use some of those same kinds of lessons when you're working in film and working in TV commercials?
Yeah, most definitely. Like, when I do, because I still do auditions and stuff even now. So when I do things, I get the script or whatever, and just look at the instructions, and I'll go over my stuff over and over again, and just kind of work on projection. But I will say this: I just did a voiceover commercial about a year ago for this energy company, and Emmanuel Wallace actually was the guy that filmed it. He's from Shelby, went to UNC Charlotte. And they have a great production company. And when I did the voiceover job, it was certain points in the lines that I had to say that he was like, take the pitch up here and bring it down here. And I had never truly done that before until I started doing voiceover work. Like, so when I was saying certain stuff, it was like, with excitement, like bring it here, bring it up here, and then bring it back down. And so just learning those things and those different experiences have helped me when speaking, just in general, away from, the TV film or voiceover work. All of those things now help me when I do speak.
There's so many opportunities out there now for those who want to do voiceover work.
Hmm.
There's tons of them, and having that voice coaching
Hmm.
to help you through that and help you think through that, that's tremendous, and that's directing as well. Well,
Yes.
awesome. Well, let's. Anything else you want to make sure you share about film, voiceover work, or TV or acting before we shift to football, athletics?
Well, just like with the, I I actually said this at my church on Sunday. It was youth Sunday at our church, and the young people, they get up and they say a verse or they'll pray, or and we all gave them applause. And once I got up, because I had to do the exhortation for the day, and I was like, we have to give it up for these kids, because even for me doing TV, film, and acting and stuff later, and even speaking, I learned it in church, because they actually made me get up and read and made me do the church plays. And so I would just encourage people, just, if you are involved in the church or just any kind of youth organizations for kids or people like that, that stuff helped me later on in life to have the confidence to do it, and so, I mean, and I learned that early. I didn't think I would ever do this stuff. But then when I was in high school, Miss Rebecca Rieger was my theater teacher at Crest. And I never forget, she came to me and she's like, Omar, you need to continue to do acting. And I'm like, acting? How much acting am I going to do in Shelby? I was so, and I love theater, but I was still so football. And then once I stopped playing, I played 2 years at the Web, and I stayed and graduated. But after my first 2 years of playing, I got me an agent, and it's just been that since. And I love it, and all of that, like I say, has helped me in all kind of different realms of speaking. But those experiences just been a kid from Light Oak, being able to do that stuff has just been amazing to me. So
One of the things that I think you really hit on is opportunities are there for us.
yeah,
And it's up to us to make the best of those opportunities and to step into them.
right.
And stepping into them, whether there's fear there or anxiety or apprehension, just taking that risk, you'll never know where it's going to take you, for sure. So football is something that you have loved for a long, long time in your life.
Mhm.
You'd mentioned that playing at the Web and playing at Crest, and you've had a chance to do some coaching as well. Talk about when coaching started for you, and we'll kind of dive into how you use that leadership voice for motivation and discipline and encouragement. But let's give a little background on when you first started coaching.
So I started coaching in 2011 when Coach Mark Barnes he was at Crest the year before, and somebody told I was actually working at Shelby High School doing behavior tech work for the whole county, and I had been training kids and just kind of helping guys with going to school and stuff like that, but I hadn't coached yet. And so he reached out to me and asked me that I want to coach, and I'm like, Coach, I don't know. And his two things he said, can you be here, and do you love Crest football? He said, I know you love
Wow.
Crest football, but can you be here? He said, I can teach you everything else. And so, yeah, and so from their point on, I've been coaching ever since. And I approach the game different, because I didn't get to start playing football until seventh grade. I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather, we got out of school and we had to work. I couldn't play sports. And so eventually he let me play football, and I'll never forget, he was like, well, you did good all this summer, so I'll let you play football. And it was always taught to me that playing sports was a privilege and not a right. So my approach to coaching and the whole nine about football is like it's a privilege, and you have to earn that privilege. And so, like, with coaching, I played the game, and we won 2 state championships as a player at Crest. Then I played at Gardner Webb for a couple years. So those experiences, and then helping guys get to college and see how they still doing it, I just took all those experiences, and then going to coach the guys now, and it's even starting then, just those experiences and showing them, hey, this is how you can do it, or showing them different ways, and even being able to communicate to them to where they can understand it. One thing that happens in coaching is people think because you are a good football player that you're going to be a good coach, and that's not it. You have to be able to explain and speak and make sure that they understand how you're giving it to them. Not a thing of, hey, I did this, so watch me do it. It's a matter of, let me show you and explain it to you how you can do it.
We've all either watched movies about sports where you've got these motivational talks, whether it's you go back to Rocky and you got Mickey in the corner, trying to motivate Rocky to take one more punch, or Hoosiers. There have been so many films. Or if there's sports fans out there and you watched some of these locker room talks, even pregame, halftime, or postgame, you see a lot of motivation that
Mhm.
happens. And sometimes that motivation is a motivation because of something that's that's happened that's a really good thing. Other
Yeah.
times it's okay. You're playing football. You're down by four touchdowns.
Yeah.
It's halftime, and you have to kind of change your approach. Talk about how you utilize motivation as a tool for communicating, because that is such a huge part of communication, especially as it relates to athletics.
So I start with the room, knowing who's in the room, knowing what the goal is, what the situation is. Are we down at halftime? Are we up at halftime? Or going into this game, is this for playing for a state championship? Is this playing for a conference game? Or is it a team that you can beat by 50? Like you have to change the motivation to what the situation is. And I always just try to tap into like knowing, okay, this is what's going on. Let me make this relatable to the guys, to the players, or whoever I'm talking to in the room. And I don't know. I just a lot of times I'm just being honest. I'll pray, and I'll just kind of like get my thoughts together. Like, okay, like Lord, like let me just say the right thing at the right time for them. Just use me to kind of motivate them, and it just come. And sometimes people ask me like, where did that come from? And sometimes I'm like, I have no clue. I just it just hit me sometime. But I also have to know when it does come, I have to articulate it and say it in a way where they do understand it. And I do know when to take my pitch up when I'm taking them about football, and I know when to bring my pitch down. To get them going. So, but that motivational piece is just knowing who's in the room, what's at stake, and what to hit on to give them that motivation. Like, what are their thoughts? How are they reacting to what's going on or this game? You gotta kind of tap into the players or the students or whatever's around to know what can motivate them. And that's another thing. Relationship is big when you're talking to people too as well. So
Yeah, and motivation can come from a couple of different places. It can come from encouragement, or it can come from discipline.
uh-huh.
And I know there's others, but those are two of the strongest ones, especially as it relates to athletics. Do you approach those two the same way, the encouragement and the discipline, as far as how
Yeah.
you speak?
So it's a speech that comes around every year, and I mean it comes around every year from 2014. And one of our players said it at the time, Chris Willis, and I ran with it, and it was like, "Man don't work, man don't eat." And the thing about that is, it's motivating. But the thing is, if you don't work, if a man don't work, he can't eat. So from a football sense, it's like where you're at practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. That's when you're putting the work in. On Friday night is when you're gonna get that reward. So Monday through Thursday, you work. Friday night, you eat. So you don't put all this work in. So now it's time to go eat. So I try to use both of the. So the discipline of putting the work in is the motivation for you to go do what you got to do on Friday night.
As I've taught this course, I've been able to spend time with athletes, and I always want to hear the life lessons they've gained from athletics. And I do that with all the students, but I found it really interesting that there's these parallels that happen, especially with our athletes, whether they're playing soccer, volleyball, softball, baseball, football, wrestling. There's some of those life lessons that are pretty universal. I could ask them for 10, and I could probably find 3 of them that are going to stand out. What are some of the life lessons that you think you've gained from being involved in athletics, either as a player or as a coach?
Um, It's oh man, it's so many. One thing like, let's say, one thing I've always learned from one coach was respect all but fear none when we're playing the game. Like, respect all opponents. You don't disrespect them, but we're not fearing anybody. Another one, like I said, with the thing about man don't work, man don't eat. I mean, you can apply that to your job. Like, you have to focus and get discipline on the job to where, you do your job to a certain degree, to a high level, you're definitely gonna get paid for it, But it's so many things that I've learned from sports that has transitioned and helped me in life throughout. And that's one thing that I try to do, is because Coach Mike Stewart and the coaches before me that taught me these things, now we're trying to do that to the guys, afterwards. So, but like I
Yeah.
said, I could try to think of so many, but it's like I've learned so many life lessons through sports that has helped me as an adult now.
One of the things also, I think, that when you're talking about speaking as a coach to a team, there's some certain thoughts you probably can have in your head. But so much of it, I think, probably has to be extemporaneous when you are having to speak on the fly. Something happens and you might have to react. And so some of your coaching is reactionary coaching based on what happens on the field. I think probably in the pregame, you can do a little bit more of that. Okay, I'm prepared this. I know who we're facing. We can get you ready. You know, we can talk about this player or this player to watch for, or hey, we're gonna have to do something a little different here because this is who we're playing. But then once you get in the game can shift
Right.
how you react as a coach.
Right. Right. And that's the thing about, and so when that happens, you know, a lot of times I think people approach it differently. You know, what I try to do is like something shift, you know, bring the guys back over. Hey, what did you see? How can we fix this? Let me adjust versus I ain't going to yell and go crazy right off. Now, I might for a tad second if it's something that we don't went over. You know, if I went over it with you and you just didn't adjust to it, then I got an issue. But if something that we haven't seen or adjusted to, it's like come back over, let's regroup, you know, and that can be like with speaking at times. You might go speak somewhere and the mic go out, or, you know, the presentation that you had that was supposed to go up is not going up, you know, so you got to adjust on the fly to be able to still present in some type of way.
Absolutely. One of the things you mentioned there is when your players come, you listen to them as well. And you listen to what they have to say and what they see, and that goes back to building relationships. And I think that's the importance of being able to communicate with each other. It's not one way.
No.
It's a two-way street.
Right. And that's the thing, because if I don't, so I can be a coach and I can watch from the sideline, but I'm not out there playing. You know, and as a former player, like when you're out there, like certain stuff you might can't hear the call from the sideline, or you might didn't see that adjustment, or you might have saw something different. So I have to listen to what they're saying out there, because they're in the trenches right now. So I have to listen to what they say. Okay, hey, what did you see? And then we can go back and look at, okay, well, let's adjust to it like this. But like I said, it can't be a one-way thing. It can't be like that, because if it's like that, you probably won't be successful, because they're going to tune you out.
Being an active listener in athletics, especially when you're on a team, is so important, because if you don't hear the call properly, and it's got to be the whole team understanding what you're doing.
Right.
For those of us that watch sports, we've seen times when somebody might jump a count, or someone might go in the wrong direction when they're supposed to be going, you know, left instead of right, and we see what happens there. So the key to understanding and listening and having that active engagement is so huge. So how do you teach young athletes, you know, those who are still trying to kind of figure their way out in life? How do you teach them the importance of being able to listen, to communicate, and to do that with each other?
So it can be tough now. Like, I mean, really tough, because just the world that we live in, the social media world, you know, most people just, I don't know, kind of doing what they want to do sometimes. And so a thing with me, like, especially with communicating, like, for example, I try to tell our players, don't say certain things, or, you know, when parents or when adults are around, kids are around, just watch the way you talk. You know, you never know when a coach is going to be around, or you never know who's watching this. Like, I know we had a college coach one time come to practice and looking at a couple of our guys, and eventually he offered a couple of them. But I'm telling them, like, while he's sitting here watching these guys, and if you guys are communicating a certain way while he's out here, he's probably gonna look at y'all like, yeah, I don't know if I would want that kid. You know, so you always got to be mindful of, you know, what you say, how you say it, who's around when you're saying it, you know, because it just, one of the biggest things, especially with sports right now, is you are a brand. Like, your person, like every athlete, you're a brand. So would I want to buy your brand? You know, and then on another side, as a football coach, it's like, you are a brand, but like, would I trust you enough to give you a $250,000, $300,000 scholarship to help me feed my family? If you can't communicate and you can't do certain things, I'm not going to risk giving that money to you and risk my job and me paying and taking care of my family if you can't communicate, if you can't listen, and if you can't be the positive. And you know, it's still sports, things happen, but at the same time, if you can't do some of those basic things, I ain't gonna spend that money on you. And at the same time, the biggest thing is that people have to realize they are a brand. And so what brand are you selling?
Yeah, and in the world of NIL now, that changes it even more so.
Hmm.
That takes it up even another level.
Right. And,
Well,
and I
anything
tell
else?
them that when they're on, like when I we go on a college visit sometime, you know. Sometimes kids want to just want to put some slides on or certain. I'm like, no, you know, put certain, you know, be comfortable, but put some shoes on, take them slides off, like because it's still even though it's a college visit, it's still a job interview, you know. So I try to teach our guys that, like every time you go visit a school, it's a job interview. So when the coach come up to you, look him in the eyes, shake his hand, yes sir, no sir, you know, all those different things. Because I learned that from my grandfather being a Navy person, and it's crazy because I'll never forget Food Line right across from CCC when I was like, I think I was 15 years old, and we were in the store. I never forget, and my grandfather said something to us, and I was like, "Yes, sir." And the manager at the time was like, "Man, I love the way you know your grandsons talk to you." That same manager gave me my first job a year later because of what he heard me say then.
So it matters. People are
Yep,
watching. People are
people are
watching.
watching.
Now, anything else you want to share about athletics before we move on to community engagement?
Just like I say, with the whole thing of being a brand as an athlete, you know, that's the approach you got to take. Like, so you have to watch what you say, learn how to communicate. You know, you are a brand. So when you are a brand, the biggest thing is what are you selling, and what am I? What do you want me to? Why do you want me?
Love it. Omar, as a director of community engagement, public speaking is probably a huge role in what you do in building trust and building relationships. Talk a little bit about that and how public speaking plays into your role as a director of community engagement.
So with my role here at the college, you know, director of community engagement, so I'm always going out to different community events. Anything in the community that CCC can be a part of, then you know we try to be there. So it's times where I have to speak on different programs that we have, or you know, it's just so many different areas that you know, like I said, doing community engagement, so many different parts of the community that I can be at, and I have to speak on behalf of the college. And so even in doing that, like I have to know certain programs. I have to know certain information that when people want it, and even if I don't know it, if I'll ask them what do they want. If I can't do it, we'll have somebody come along with us to do it. But if I need to do it, then guess what? I have to brush up on that information and speak on it and present on it. So my job now is so much of public speaking. Like that's really kind of what I do a lot of times because I'm engaged and I'm on different boards and I have to speak up, you know, and I'm learning different things, but I'm always speaking on behalf of CCC. And like I said, whenever somebody have information that they want to know, or if it's some stuff that they have thoughts on that, hey, can we collaborate with CCC on these things? So all of these different things now, I have to be able to speak.
Does that go back again to relationship building and listening to what the
Yes.
needs are out there?
Yes. And that's so going out into the community and listening to what people need and what they want in the relationship that we have because of the relationships that I've built. And the crazy thing is the relationships I built come from education, come from sports, come from acting, like being in all these different rooms have helped me with my position that I have now. So it all goes hand in hand for me, you know, and so just having those relationships. And so somebody may like, hey, Omar, we got this program. Can CCC come up and set a table up and, you know, have the information up? And if people come and ask you stuff, can you speak on it? Then they'll reach out to us and we'll go do those events. So a lot of things that I do is based off of relationship as well.
Yeah, and you mentioned the variety of the different types of audiences, and that goes again back to audience awareness, knowing who you're speaking to, what your purpose is for being there, and being prepared.
Mm-hmm.
And understand that sometimes things are going to go wrong, but if they do, you roll with it.
Got to roll with it.
One of my jobs at Gardner Webb is public relations related work as well. So when people call and ask me a question, they're like, "Noel, can you help me with this?" And normally I'll say, "Well, if I can't, I will find somebody who can."
That's right.
And so I always want to provide an answer for somebody and help somebody along the way to find what it is they're looking for and what
Mm-hmm.
questions they have. I want to help them find those answers because I want to help them be informed. And then in doing that, that also helps me be informed. So the next time I get a phone call,
Right.
I'm prepared for something like that. With your time serving as a director of community engagement there at Cleveland Community College, what are some of those stories that you feel have been the most meaningful from a standpoint of conversations you've had with students or with community groups? What are some of those that stand out to you?
Like, so, being able to help put on presentations and different programs out in the community is one place where we help do a program. Well, being at this place, they didn't have Wi-Fi. And so CCC and the school system, we all out here at this the place where we're having a presentation, they didn't have Wi-Fi, and somebody's like, "Well, what?" So eventually, because we chose to have this place for the event, now they have Wi-Fi, and they never had it before up until that. So things like that, being able to put people in a room where they normally wouldn't go, and so now they're at this place where they normally wouldn't go, and they're like, "Oh, they need this out here. Okay, let's get them that." And so just being able to do stuff like that, some of the stories where you have people that reach, and I actually just got through talking about this earlier. A lot of people reach out to me in the community because they know I work at the college. So somebody like, hey, I got this cousin or me, I'm thinking about wanting to take this program. So I'll literally meet them outside, walk them where they need to go. And then once you see them, get enrolled in class, and it's been seeing some get enrolled and then seeing them graduate and getting jobs, like that means more to me than anything, like seeing somebody coming in with this goal in mind, and then they, you help them just guide them to where they need to go, because some people won't come to it. Like the first thing that can, knock them down from like any distractions or any disruptions from somebody enrolling, they may not come. So I'm like, hey, I'll meet you outside, and I'll walk them to student enrollment. Okay, meet this person, get this done, and then they'll get it done and get in class, and then 2 years later they're graduating, and you're like, man, I remember when they were scared to come and take class. So there's a lot of stories like that. Being able to help out in the community will help people, because I see it as this person getting their degree, that's going to help them get this job, that's going to help their economical status, that's going to help their family.
Are those the kind of stories that you also in turn will share to prospective students?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and so a lot of times with social media now, like if it's one of the guys I grew up with, or somebody's son, and not all the time, but sometimes I'll be like, man, can I share this picture on social media that you enrolled in class? Because like I said, I worked in the school system for a long time, and there might be a kid that I know, may have went through some things, and now they're enrolling in class, and I've like literally showed a picture of a student that enrolled that was taking class, and because of that student, people have hit me up. Hey, Porter, I saw such and such enrolled. Can I get some information on that?
Wow.
Oh yeah, it happens all the time, and I let them know. I'm like, because I know the kids' stories, and I know some of the things they went through. So when somebody's seeing you taking that one step, then it can influence so many others.
As someone who understands the importance of that theatrical background, so much of theater is telling stories, so much of film and TV storytelling,
Mhm.
and the storytelling can be a 30-second commercial, or
Right.
it can be a an Avatar length 3 hour 17-minute film. But stories are so important to helping the world connect with things, and you've mentioned some of those. I'd love for you to talk about, at what point do you feel when you want to tell your personal stories of things that have happened to you that can maybe benefit others who may be going through something similar?
So I had to learn this over the years too, because it's all about the audience, like we talked about earlier. You know, I grew up, my grandparents raised me. I said that, you know, um, I was at Gardner Webb. I had my two daughters when I was young. So kind of had to learn and grow through some things. But my story doesn't relate to everybody. And I had to learn that. And I did learn that early on where, I'm telling my testimony and and I went through this and I went through that. And somebody looking at me like, oh man, that's cool, but I can't relate to that. So I had to learn how to read the room, and not so much as take my testimony and learn how to say it in different ways, if that makes sense, to where people can still appreciate it and not go so, because everybody, like my situation was kind of rough growing up, but everybody's situation ain't that way. Somebody may have been going through something else. So like I said, I had to adjust in talking about certain things, and maybe taking a piece of what my testimony and putting it with something else, or or a piece of something just to encourage somebody, but not saying all of the hard stuff. Like I said, it's about reading the room. I had to go to New Orleans maybe probably like 10 years ago to go speak. And I mean, I was in, I think it might have been the ninth ward, I think. And that probably let me know I could speak to any group of kids ever in my life. It was like maybe 10 kids in this one room. I spoke to a couple of days at these big schools. Then I had to go to the alternative school to speak to some kids. And I started talking at first, and these kids looking at me like, man, I ain't trying to hear what you talking about, and that's just really how they was looking at me. But once I kind of looked to the group and kind of shift, my story a little bit. And then by the time it was over, they were like, thank you. Oh, thank you for coming from North Carolina to speak to us. But I had to pay attention to the room.
Yeah. Wow. Well, I've got a couple of students who have had a couple of questions they wanted me to ask you. And these things I think are normal for people who were trying to get into public speaker, maybe taking a public speaking class. They relate to nerves, stage fright, but also kind of struggling to find your authenticity. So I'll ask the first one, what's some advice you share with those students or those speakers who want to sound professional? They want to sound like they know what they need to say, but also how to keep that authenticity, how to be real, how to be
Yeah.
yourself.
So for me, when I finally want, especially if I'm telling my story, one thing I would say is nobody can tell your story better than you can, no matter how you tell it. And eventually, like, that's one thing when somebody start asking me about me, oh, I could do that all day, you know. But I think what happens is when somebody wants to know your story, and that's when we get nervous because it's like, oh my gosh, I got to say it this way or that way, and we all want to be professional when we speak, but what they will hear is the realness in what you're saying, and I will say the more and more that you do it, the more and more you'll get comfortable, and then you'll know how to take the ums out, and you'll learn how to take that stuff out and the more and more that you do it. But I will say nobody can tell your story better than you can. And I always have an approach where I don't know why I do this, but I like to make people laugh in the beginning just to kind of break it up a little bit, and then I'll kind of start, just speaking on whatever they want me to speak on. And the thing is too, even if it's not your testimony, like certain things when it comes to sports, or when it comes to recruiting, or when it comes to coming to CCC, I know that stuff. So because I know it, I'm confident in me speaking on it. So when you start wanting to be a speaker, well, what do you want to speak about? If the more that you're confident, like when you're speaking on stuff that you know, then I don't care who in the room. I know what I know.
Right.
And it's not like a cockiness because I still get nervous. But once I get up there, my experience, what I know about whatever I'm speaking on, I'm confident in it because I'm telling you my experience. And like, so once again, nobody can tell your story better than you can. Nobody.
So managing those nerves, stage fright, do you think is preparation is a big part of that?
Yes. So one thing, even when I'm telling my story or I'm talking on certain things, I make my points out. Like I write stuff out, I type it out. I have my points that, I'll speak on just to kind of guide me, So that's one thing too, is just like having your points, having things to guide you and once you get to going, and like I said, and I'm always nervous in the beginning when I speak, always. But once I start digging in on the information that I know, then I've done the research on it and I've prepared for it. Once again, man don't work, man don't eat. If I prepare myself, then I know I'm gonna be fine when it's time for me to go. But if you don't prepare yourself and you get up there and think you're just gonna wing it, you're gonna be it's gonna be a crash course.
I encourage my students to write an outline first to get your
Yes.
ideas down. And then I actually ask them to write a script because that helps them to formulate those thoughts into a
Yes.
script. But then I say, you don't have to speak from the script. The script just helps you to know where you're going. You're charting a path
Yes.
You're building a map of where you want to go, and you're looking at, okay, what it could possibly look like. Some
Yes.
students are fine if they want to read from the script. I mean, if you are working in television,
Right.
especially television news, you're going to have a teleprompter
Hmm.
many times where you have a script that's there for you. But that goes back. If you're not prepared, sure, some people can speak off the cuff,
Right.
and they are wonderful at that. I think about improv comedians who are
Right.
amazing at doing that kind of thing, but not everyone is. And when you're not prepared, that's when that filler language can come in even more often. The
Hmm.
ums and the ahs, and like. And I think when we're having a conversation, that filler language is fine. I
Right.
think having a conversation, it's going to be there when you're talking with someone. But when you're on stage, sometimes that filler language can get in the way
Yeah.
of people hearing your story, because all of a sudden they start saying, hey, that person just said, 12 times within this, 5-minute span. And that's why I try to encourage them to think about and listen. And silence is okay.
That's
You can
right.
have silence, but I think as humans, we're so used to filling the void with some kind of noise that we think we have to say, or and it is natural. It's a very
Right.
natural thing. And so
It
I
is.
try to talk to students that that is a natural thing, but you want to find a way to be aware of it. So when
Right.
you're aware of it, sometimes you can steer yourself away from it if you're aware of it. Well, do you have any tools that you have to try to steer yourself away from using that filler language?
Like I said, once again, I try to map out what I want to, because like I'll think about stuff that I have to say. Okay, I'm writing it out. I'm writing it out, and so I'll just map it out to okay, well, this is the point I'm going to make. I may speak on this and may speak on that, and so I'll just take my time, looking at those things to work out. I won't get off track, and then like you said, it's moments where I'll take a moment to not just talk, not just I just want to say stuff, and then that's when you get the So what I'll do is, like I said, map it out and then talk about. I'll follow my points, and even going into the next point, like I'm not just jumping or not just feeling like I gotta say something, and that's where it come to thinking about it. But the thing to take the ums and ahs away from me is I have it mapped out what I want to say.
And you speak from an outline, or basically talking points
Yes,
is how you
yes,
speak.
yes, yes.
So what's some other advice that you'd like to share with these students who are emerging communicators or public speakers? Any tips that you want to make sure that you can share with them to help them find their voice as speakers or leaders?
I would say, and I've been doing this recently myself. Like, go back and watch other speakers, like watch people that you look up to, or it might. Why I watch TED Talks,
Yes.
you know, literally just to watch how some of these people communicate. And I'm still learning how to do it. And I've been to different places and coaching clinics and even just in the entertainment world doing this stuff. But at the same time, I'm still learning myself. So I would always say, watch other speakers. It was somebody I was watching I saw on IG the other day, and the way he spoke, I was like, man, I need to take a piece of that. Like I like the way he did that. So I'm still like learning that stuff too. But
Yes.
I definitely would say, watch speakers, watch TED Talks. Be Donnie Thurman, a friend of mine. Donnie with the garden,
Yes.
well, like my little big brother. He had a book on like stories that you could take these stories and relate them. It's certain stories that you could read and relate to certain subjects. That was another thing that I learned from him, is like, having stories to relate to certain subjects. And so you can kind of, when you're speaking on something, find a story. A lot of times sometimes I use the Bible. I'll use a story if I'm speaking on this, and I might find a story in the Bible where I can relate to it, and I'll speak on that to kind of relate to what I'm talking about, and it can make, oh, okay, I like that, or even sometimes when I speak on not even my testimony, but people around me that I know, a story that they went through. I didn't go through it, but I know they did, so I can kind of speak on it. But like I say, just watching speakers, being around speakers, and then the subject matter that you want to talk about, do the research. Do the research. And one thing about me, I really like to speak on things that I'm passionate about, and that's what I get sometimes. And like I said, did I know I had a voice? I don't know. I just was talking about stuff when people ask me, certain things. But I do know I do love to speak on things that I'm passionate about. And even you asking me to come and speak, like for me, coming to speak and being at Gardner Webb and being anything, it was a point in time when people didn't think I would ever graduate from Gardner Webb, because of how life was hitting me. But for me to be able to come back and be a distinguished alumni, just different things, and that stuff matters to me. Where in my head, it's like people were counting me out from doing these things, and now I'm on here with you speaking. Some people didn't think I was going to be able to do that.
Well, Omar, your voice matters, buddy. It really does. As you kind of reflect on, I want you to kind of step into the future. Where do you hope that years down the road, when people think about you, where do you think that you would hope that your voice, what kind of impact and mark you would hope that that would leave on teams, on students, or maybe even the broader community?
Wow, man, oh, that's fool. I mean, I just think for me, I just hope that the the life that I've lived and the situations that I've gone through and navigated through can help somebody else. You know, yeah, that's one of the
Yeah,
biggest things. Just like somebody can say or see me and be like, he watching him has encouraged me. Like I can relate to him. I can
mm,
relate to that story. So watching him do things let me think that I can do it because it was people that I watched do certain
yeah,
things that I know people counted out, or not even that, but just seeing people that did things just on a high level. I just watched my cousin, my cousin be installed as the chancellor at NC State. He's from Frederick Street in Shelby, right in front of Robertson, and I was invited to watch his installation service as the chancellor at NC State.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
and I'm sitting there crying because I'm like,
yeah,
man, like I watched this guy grow up. He married my cousin, and they've been together since the '80s. But I'm like, man, I know this guy, so
yeah,
that inspires me. So I just hope that the life that I've lived can help somebody else.
yeah. So, one final thought, one final challenge that you would leave for students relating to leadership, to communication, to public speaking. What would that one final challenge or thought that you would want to leave with them?
With leadership, I would just say a lot of times people want to get in leadership because they want to lead, but one is a quote. I think it's a quote that I heard someone say: to serve the people, you have to service the people. And be somebody and that's in leadership, but just love people. If
Yeah,
you want to be in leadership to work with people, you got to love people. Some people want to be in leadership just to say they're a leader or they're
right,
running stuff.
right.
But I just feel like if you were to be a leader, you have to serve and love people. Um, but yeah, but that's
Yeah,
that's all I got. If
yeah,
that's the role that you want, and then even in speaking, if it's something that you are passionate about, do the research, speak on it. Nobody can tell your story better than you can. I always know that. And like I say, continue to watch people, watch other speakers, and then just grow in those areas. And at the same time, create, if it ain't a lane that you think you can go in that one, create your own lane.
I love it. I love it. Omar, any final thoughts or things you want to share that maybe I didn't ask you relating to communication and public speaking?
Man, I'm just grateful and honored for you to have me on. And like I said, and I know your students may be watching when you show it to them, but I'm really serious. I watched this man, and you were an inspiration to me. Somebody that I saw on
Yeah,
TV at my house, and then I saw you out in public, and you were always just nice to me, young guy from the area, and I appreciate you. So thank you.
man. Thanks, buddy. That means a lot to me. It really does. I appreciate your kind words and appreciate your friendship. And thanks for taking the time to spend with our students here at Gardner Webb University. Omar Porter, if people wanted to follow any of your work, what's the best way to do that? You have any
Ooh.
public social sites or anything you wanted to
I mean,
share with people?
I have my IG page that I have. It's just Omar Porter. Yeah, it's just Omar Porter. Then I actually do a recruitment podcast. We're trying to help parents with players and stuff. So that's Recruit Knowledge with Omar Porter. And then I play music as well. So I have music on social media as well. All that stuff is on the Omar Porter. So
Yeah, we didn't even talk about your music voice, and that's a whole other type of communicating with the public through music.
yeah.
Let's briefly talk about that. Talk about the impact that music has in crossing boundaries.
So I started with music. I picked up like literally playing drums in my backyard on 5-gallon buckets with my grandpa, taking tree branches and beating. And eventually, I learned how to play drums, and I started picking up the congas, and I play percussion. And so, like, I've played with Anthony Hamilton, Grammy artist Regina Bell. Like, I go on like different artists that I've played with in that world, but I've actually included music into my speeches sometimes. Sometimes when I work with young people, I have like I'll speak on people working together and stuff like that. And so I'll play my congas, and I have like shakers and chimes and the clave and all this stuff. And so I'll give all of the students that I'm talking to, I'll give them these different instruments. And so I'll play by myself, and then I'll let them play by themselves, and then we'll all play together and create this big sound. And so when
Wow.
we're done, I'm like, hey, now you heard me playing by myself, and it was just this sound. But when we all played together, we created this one huge big sound together. So it's always better for us to work together than just by
Wow.
ourselves. So I always try to incorporate that sometime when I need to with music. But music, that's my I like I said, growing up in Light Oak, as some people say, growing up in the hood. I went to Spain a year ago to play music, and I never
Wow.
thought somebody me would be in Spain playing music.
Man. Well, there's a TED Talk right there for you, man, right there. Omar Porter, thanks for joining us right here on The Art of Public Speaking, Gardner Webb University. Look forward to talking to you later, buddy. Thank you, man.
Yes, sir. Go Dogs.